All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. We're going to go ahead and get started because I've got a few just housekeeping messages to give you at the beginning. And so it looks like we've got quite a few people coming in. So I'm going to go ahead and just start talking to you. So this is a DIY sprinkler repair class for the city of Arlington Water Utilities and Arlington Libraries. And it's also brought to you by Tarrant Regional Water District. So before we start the presentation, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about TRWD. And so TRWD is our local raw water supplier. And so we own all of the pipelines and the reservoirs and the infrastructure that is required to essentially bring raw surface water from these reservoirs where we store it to our local water treatment plants. And then your local water treatment plants in your cities then treat it to drinking water standards, and then it's provided to our homes and businesses. And so we've got 3 missions. We do water supply, we do flood control, which is the levees along the Trinity River and everything, and recreation, so the Trinity trails as well. And so you might be wondering why Tarrant Regional Water District would be sponsoring a presentation about DIY sprinkler repair. And that is basically because water conservation is a really important water supply strategy to continue to provide water in the future. So we've got a growing population and we want to make sure that we have good water resources in the future. And so it's important to conserve what we have now and use it wisely. And so our conservation website that we have is savetarrantwater.com, and that's where you can go to find all of TRWD's conservation resources. So we've got free weekly watering advice that you can sign up for that is custom to your location, comes to your phone or your email every Monday and lets you know exactly how much to water your lawn based on the evapotranspiration in your area and based on the rainfall for the past 7 days. We've also got free sprinkler evaluation. So if you're a Tarrant County resident, you can go sign up for a free sprinkler evaluation where a licensed irrigator will come to your house and take a look at your sprinkler system and let you know if you have any inefficiencies and how you can fix that up. We've also got a calendar of events and classes just like this one, and then there's tons of videos of past classes, water saving tips, and other resources. So definitely go check out savetarrantwater.com to see a little bit more of what we have to offer in terms of our water conservation. And now, if you are an Arlington resident, you can do the Know Your H2O. So it's arlingtontx.gov/Know Your H2O. And basically what this is much of the city has the AMI remote read meters installed. And what that means is your water usage is on the internet for you to monitor and for you to look at. So it's really great. You can sign up for notifications to come to you if you're using too much water so that you know to turn that off. You can also be notified in case you have a leak or something that you didn't know about. And it's just great because you can actually look at your water use as it's happening rather than having to wait for that full month billing cycle to see how much your water use is. So definitely if you're an Arlington resident, make sure to go online and check that out and create your login if you haven't already. And then another great thing is that we've got free sprinkler kits. So usually we do this class in person, and in person we'll pass out free sprinkler kits so that people can go home and test their own sprinkler systems. And since we're virtual right now, you can go and pick them up next week now through July 17th at the Southeast Branch Library, and that's the one over there on Southeast Green Oaks. And basically it's just a little free pack where we've got these sprinkler catch cups that'll help you test your sprinkler for yourself at home, and a few other little fun goodies as well. So make sure that you go by and pick up your free sprinkler test kit after we're done with this presentation. All right. And I think that's all I've got. So now I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speaker and turn it over to him. So let me give him permission. All right, Steve, I've given you permission. You should be able to go ahead and show your screen. So our speaker today is Steve Chaney, and he is just recently retired from AgriLife as a horticultural extension agent. So he's an expert in lawns, an expert in sprinklers, an expert in horticulture, and he's here to talk to you today about your home sprinkler system. So looks good, Steve. I'm seeing your slides, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you, Heather. And hope everybody enjoys it tonight. We just picked a few common things that we see in the landscape over the last 20 or 30 years that people called me at the office and asked questions about. Um, as she was saying earlier, you know, you can call for a free, sign up for a free sprinkler evaluation, which is always good. But we're going to talk about a few of the things that you can do yourself before you get to that point. So it's pretty easy, pretty simple. Hope you enjoy it. Common irrigation issues that we see often are overwatering. You know, the first part of this year, it seemed like it rained every day. And yet I would drive down the street and see people watering their lawns. That's terrible. So as much as 50% of the water we use outside is wasted from very inefficient watering methods and systems. So we've got to curb our water use somehow and quit wasting it. Some of it's poor design installation. Some of it is just a poor irrigation schedule, and we'll talk more about that. No routine maintenance. Things that you can do yourself are very easy. Runoff and then changing of your landscape design. Remember, you put your landscape in and it starts off small, just like kids, and they get big and grow. So you've got to change things as they adapt. Here's just a regular basic irrigation plan. If you have you know, now it's a licensed irrigator has to put in the system and they have to draw up a plan for you. And so all of these things that you see are where the heads are, and they're all overlapping and things. So if there's a bad plan or a bad installation, some of them don't overlap and they don't do as good a job. So you should have had this if you bought it later. Hopefully you can find a copy of it. It's always nice to have. Simple parts of an irrigation system that a lot of people don't realize is, you know, you have the main water meter somewhere in your yard, maybe in your driveway, maybe in your yard, maybe in a box. And that's where the guy from the, you know, in most cases, the guy from the city or person from the city comes and reads your water meter once a month. Then you have a line going straight into the house to feed your house. If you put in an irrigation system, you have to have a backflow preventer. So they tee out here and put a backflow preventer. And this keeps anything from seeping back in from the yard, going back into your main water line and going back into the city's water line. So that's a very important thing. And it needs to be serviced on a regular basis. And you'll have a master valve that turns everything off or on, so that before you get to the regular valves that go out and go into your irrigation system. Then you have the main line feeding out into your irrigation system. You have lateral lines with your pop-ups or rotors or whatever you may have, and each station has a valve that turns it on. So just simple and easy. A lot of people just never see that because it's all buried. Backflow prevention device should look something like that, depending on the size and the age it was put in. It's all brass, so it takes the weather and takes the wear and tear. But again, needs to be maintained, you know, at least every couple of years, have somebody check it out. That's what it looks like above ground. If you see it in some instances, it's not real attractive, and it's a chance that somebody's going to come along and kick it or run over it or something. So a lot of times they just simply hide it with a faux rock. It fits in around your plants, looks a little nicer, and so it's kind of neat, you know, but it's hidden, easy to take off so that you can get to it and maintain it. The irrigation valve is very simple. You have water in. Main line is always full underwater, under pressure, and then you have water out. It goes to the lateral line. So water only in the line when the zone is running. So this is a solenoid here. It's an electric solenoid, and it turns it on and off so that it allows water to come through or turn it off. And that goes back to your controller. And it's controlled that way. Now that's something that can go out. It's electrical, so periodically they do go out. Hopefully not very often, but periodically they do. And you just simply you can either replace the valve, or in a lot of cases, you can just simply replace the solenoid. It's fairly easy to do. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, you can have a licensed irrigator come and do it, or you can do it yourself, depending on your comfort level. Pop-up sprinkler heads are something that, again, a lot of people don't understand. They just never get out and mess with them. So here's an expanded version of a generic sprinkler head. You have the body. You have the spring in here that helps it to go up and down when it needs to. Here is the throttle part, and here are the lid and then the nozzles themselves. So you have an adjustment screw in the top. You have a nozzle that may be 8 foot, 10 foot, 4 foot, whatever it may be. You have the riser coming up. You have a seal here. It kind of keeps the dirt and dust out of it. Your soil level is right here. So your top of your cap should just barely be above the soil level. Then you got a body and then the inlet here where the water comes in. We'll talk a little bit about that real quick, but it can easily be replaced if it needs to be. A lot of times the damage here is at the nozzle or the riser or the cap. So one of the easier ways of doing it, instead of having to dig it all up, is just have an extra one that looks just like it. Simply unscrew the cap, take it out, replace that piece, put it back in. If the body's not damaged, there's no need to dig it up. So just a little piece of trivia for you. Where to locate leaks that may reduce the pressure. Sometimes that's an issue. Sometimes the cap, sometimes the nozzle, sometimes the body itself. It could be a riser that's, depending on how deep your line is. They put it just a standard riser in that takes it up from the T up so that it gets to soil level. So it could be in this piece. It could be the threads here. So it's a little, it's hard to tell. But if you start to see a pressure issue, then you just start taking it as a detective and taking it one step at a time, working your way down. Common irrigation problems that we see are the nozzle partially or totally clogged. That can create a poor irrigation pattern. A sprinkler nozzle sprays water onto the sidewalk or driveway or road. And that's a big no-no because you don't need to water the concrete. And during the winter, if it gets cold, all of a sudden get a cold snap, and you put out water out there and then it freezes on that concrete, somebody could have an accident. In fact, some cities, if you irrigate and you get water out on the road and it freezes and causes an accident, you, the homeowner, are legally responsible. So you don't want that to happen. Sprinkler nozzle or head broken, maybe gushing water out of the top or maybe not popping up at all. Sprinkler head's no longer straight up and down. As the ground shifts, somebody drives up on your yard, who knows what could happen that could cause it to not be straight up and down anymore. Sprinkler causes a cloud of mist. If all you see is mist out there when your irrigation system is on, it's not very effective at all. You're talking 20 or 30% effective, and that's just a huge waste of water. Grass, shrubbery, or tree blocking the distribution pattern. And, as we talked about it a minute ago, your plants grow, and at some point they may get the tree, instead of it just being a little bitty 5-gallon tree that's big around as your finger, becomes a 30-foot tall oak that's, you can't put your arm around, and that can block the pattern. So you may have to relocate that head. You may have to put a different nozzle on there. You may have to put an additional head. So just kind of think about that and just kind of keep that in mind as plants grow. You have dry landscape areas. Possible causes could be low system water pressure, poor distribution, plugged nozzle, wind coming in. It's hard to say. One of my tools that I used a lot as a horticulturist when I go out to look at lawns was just a pocket knife. And you see an area right in the middle of the lawn where it was kind of brown and everything else is green. Take your knife or a screwdriver or whatever and just kind of push down in it. If it's real hard and you can't get the knife down in it, but you can get it a foot over, you can get down in the green, then you know that you have an issue with your irrigation system. Irrigation heads installed too far apart, are not in a recommended square or triangle pattern, and that's just part of a poor landscape design or irrigation design in the first place. Irrigation checkup, that's something you guys can do as a homeowner. Enables you to diagnose the obvious problems that affect the efficiency. And that could be a clogged nozzle. It could be a misaligned heads throwing water into the street or driveway. Maybe the heads are not vertical. Maybe they've sunk down as, put new grass or new soil trying to level things off. A leaking broken head, maybe a valve or a pipe. Maybe you decided to let your grass grow a little taller. That's a great program during the summer. Mow your grass a little bit higher and a little less often. And the higher the grass is, within reason, shades the root system so that you don't have as much evaporation. And then as the heat goes down at the end of the summer, you start gradually bringing it back down. So high grass can sometimes affect it. You might have dry landscape areas, and you might have a pressure too high or too low in your system. But the biggest thing to remember with the irrigation checkup is that most of us have our irrigation system going off at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, but very few of us ever get up at 3 or 4 o'clock to look to see if our system's working. So what I recommend to people is every 2 or 3 months, if it's a nice day and it's a Saturday or Sunday or whatever day off you have, go out and manually turn your irrigation system on for 5 minutes per zone and just walk it and look to see if you've got any broken heads, if you've got any misaligned heads, see if everything works good. If everything does, clicking on to the next station, 20, 30 minutes, depending on how many zones you have, you're done. And then you know that you've done your due diligence. So it's a great way of checking it up, and it'll save you money in the long run, and it'll be much more efficient. If you find something, get some of those little flags you see at Home Depot or any of the box stores, and you see something that's not right, even if you don't have time to fix it right there, just go stick a little flag by it, and that'll remind you later that afternoon or that weekend that you need to dig it up or you need to readjust something. Irrigation checks. It's amazing how many people over the years when I go out and talk to somebody about their irrigation issues, and I ask them where your controller was, and they say, huh? I said, where's the clock for your irrigation system? And they just look at me puzzled, like, I have no idea. So if you've got an in-ground irrigation system, you've got a controller somewhere. Sometimes it's in garage, sometimes it's outside, but most of the time it's going to be inside, and usually in most cases it's covered up. So you got to dig it out, find out what it is, what kind and how to work it. You need to make it work for you, not you work for it. This is a Hunter. It's a great little controller, not real expensive. Simply to run it, it's pretty simple. You turn it to your right, put it on current day and time, and make sure that it's set correctly. If the electricity went out, Eastern Standard Time, Daily Standard Time, Central Standard Time, you may have to adjust it periodically. Start times. What time is your system starting each zone? And that's pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory. Once you turn it there and this will start blinking, then you change it here, plus or minus. You change it up and down, back and forth. Everything's right there. The run times, how long do you want each zone to run? That's important, because we need to get an X amount of water out during a growing season if it's not raining. But we don't want to have it running too long that it starts running off into the street and various other places. So check your run times to make sure that they're set right. And all have to be exactly the same. You may have one runs for 10 minutes, another one runs for 12 minutes, or whatever it may be. Seasonal adjustment, that's sometimes is important, and we adjust things according to the season. Manual all stations, if we want to turn it on, all of the stations on, or if we want to turn them on one station at a time manually to do that irrigation checkup. And then this is the most important one. If it's in the middle of the rainy season, just turn the system off. You don't have to have it on. And you may have it off for 2 or 3 months. That way you don't have a chance of it accidentally coming on or having some issues there. So know how to do all those things with however irrigation you have. And now some people say, well, I don't have any way of knowing how to do it. I don't have any instruction manual. Most of the time, if you just open, it usually opens this from this side, it'll swing open because there's the hinges. And on the inside, it'll have a sheet that tells you step by step how to do all of these things. If for some reason that's gone, just simply get on the internet, look up Hunter XC, and it'll have a PDF instruction manual you can print off for yourself, so you'll have it. So it's fairly easy to do. And last but not least, know what it is. There's the inside of it. You know where all the wires are coming from the controllers out to each individual zone. So if you start ever having issues, you can check to make sure something's smoking or that a wire hasn't come loose. Rain and freeze sensors. All your current ones in the last 10 or 15 years have all had to have a rain sensor that turns it off if it starts raining. Some have a freeze sensor, some don't. It's very inexpensive, and I strongly suggest if you have an older system that you retrofit it. You can do it yourself. They have wireless ones that you don't even have to run the wires for. And very inexpensive. You can get them at an irrigation supply. You can get them at a box store. So think about that if you don't have one. Here's another one, just a rain and freeze sensor that is all hooked in together. So think about how much of your water bill is irrigation. Some homes have dual irrigation meters or dual water meters, one for the water, one for the irrigation. Some don't. But if you just have one, then go out, read your meter before you turn on your irrigation system. Read the meter after the irrigation has gone through all the zones. Subtract the first number from the second, answer is the amount of gallons you used that day. And so that'll help you to chart how much you're using, if you're using too much, if you're not using enough, whatever it may be. But it's always good just to know how many you're using. Precipitation rate, calculating, use the catch cans. Catch cans are what Heather was talking about a few minutes ago that you can pick up at the library. They're very small, simple. Got a good instruction sheet on how to use them. And you simply go out and put them around a head, and you run it for, we suggest 15 minutes. Manually run that system for 15 minutes, or that zone for 15 minutes. Number one, looking to see if you have any runoff, because usually in about 12 to 15 minutes, you'll start having runoff depending on your soil, your location. And then 15 minutes is easy numbered because you can then, if it's a quarter of an inch, you know that you got to run that system in an hour to get a full inch. So it's just the easy way of figuring it. Catch can systems, here's some that are like this. You see this usually more in the professional type. Some people use tuna fish cans, dog cans, cat food, whatever they have, and just put several of them out there around that head. Here's the ones that TRWD gets out that are wonderful. They're colorful and easy to see, and they'll last you forever. So periodically when you're doing it, just go out and put it out there and make sure that you know how much it is to put out at 1 inch of water at any given week that's in the growing season. This is what I was telling you earlier. Use a screwdriver and knife, plunge it down into an area, pull it back up to see how deep your water's going. You'll find out that either I can't penetrate very deep or I can penetrate all the way and it's still a little wet down at the bottom, or maybe it's not wet at all. Just an easy way to check your own lawn to see what's going on. Sprinklers sometimes are too deep. It just barely hooks up over the top, and so it can't get good distribution. So there's a couple different ways there. You can dig it up, put a riser, and then raise it up just a little bit. You may dig around it a little bit, so it has a little bit more area to go through. Several different ways of doing that, whether you do it yourself or you have an irrigation company come out. If you got poor distribution because it's dirty, you got mud and leaves and grass and stuff, you may want to clean it out. And on the inside of this, right underneath this nozzle, is a long screen filter, and so sometimes that gets full of particulates and mud and stuff, so you can simply clean that out. I'm going to show you guys here in a minute. Clogged or worn out nozzles. There's the little filter I was showing you there. It's just the little white one usually. It's right underneath there, so when you pull it up, hold it up. Sometimes people will put a pair of vice grips underneath there real lightly to hold that up so that you can unscrew the nozzle. You can take it out and just clean it, or a lot of the irrigation companies, they buy them by the gross and they just pull them out, throw them away, and replace them with a clean one and not have to worry about going through them and cleaning them. It's just up to you, but it could be just clogged or just a worn out nozzle, and that's something that you can do as a homeowner. Misaligned head, that's right on the edge of the curb, and as you can see here, some of it's washed away. People drive up on the curb when they're trying to cut the corners, trailers, whatever. Sometimes they'll hit one. If they hit it during the rainy season, or they hit it after it's irrigated and everything's wet, it'll move it. And so instead of being straight up and down, it's misaligned. All you have to do is go down and dig it up that a little bit and realign it straight up and down, and then pack it back in. So something fairly easy you can do if you want to. There's another misaligned head. Simply, you can see the tire tracks where people come over the top of that and they just hit it. Head leaking. Every once in a while you'll see that, that the head itself is just leaking. Everything else is kind of brown. And then here you have this real dark, rich green patch. And then everything running down the side of the concrete and down the curb. So all you got to do is go in there and take a weed eater and clean that up. Find where that head is and check it like we talked about earlier. Maybe it's got a missing nozzle, damaged head, whatever. Repair it or have it done, depending on, again, how comfortable you are with it, so that you don't have that issue. But that's just a red flag for you, telling you that there's an issue right there. Broken pipe. It's kind of a neat little fun video there to see. It's running, so the pipe underneath the head is still got a good enough seal. It's coming up, but it's leaking out there too. So you're flooding everything, and that's something you don't need. That's easily fixed. Again, just takes a few minutes. In some cases, maybe some galoshes to get in there to fix it. Here's another broken head and pipe coming out where it's just flooding the street. If you see that, you go back to your water meter and turn the water off so that you can easily fix it. Head not vertical. Again, maybe who knows what happened. Maybe it got too wet and somebody hit it and they pushed it over. Who knows? But it's just simply a matter of going in and digging up around here and straightening it back up, and then packing the soil in again so that you don't have any issue. Again, there's the top of the nozzle. There's a little screw to adjust it. If something happened and you need to get in, you can simply unscrew the cap, pull out all the insides to clean it, to check if there's any cracks or anything on the inside, and then put it all back together. Low pressure, you may have low pressure because there's an issue somewhere else in the system. And so it's just not putting out enough. And that's another red flag to tell you that there's an issue somewhere in that, so that you need to look and see what you can do to get it fixed. If it's a sunken head and it's way too low, again, may need a riser, may need to go from a 4-inch pop-up to a 6-inch pop-up. It depends if you put in a lot of new soil or new sod or whatever it may be. You got high grass, again, sometimes, it's just at a certain area where it doesn't get mowed well or something happens and the grass gets up too high and around it, and so you don't get good flow. So go in again with a weed eater, clean it up, and then check to make sure that everything is okay on that head. Maybe you got a broken nozzle or head. Now, again, you're not going to see this unless you're up at 4 o'clock in the morning when your system's running. But if you got a broken nozzle or head and you got that geyser coming up, then it's going to take all the pressure off of all of your other heads in that zone, so nothing's going to be efficient. So that is number one. It's just huge waste of water because you're running that for 15 minutes in that zone, for instance, and it's running 15 minutes. You can literally waste hundreds and hundreds of gallons of water just flowing down the street. Again, you can do it yourself fairly easy. Just go get a flag and flag it, and then come back to fix it, or you can have somebody do it if you want. A broken head, or maybe it's even missing. Sometimes, something happens to it, and the head will fly off. Or maybe it just breaks completely. Again, it's a huge geyser. It needs to be taken care of because you can see there's a lot of water being wasted. Here's another area where you have a lot of water just misting out. It's still running off, so there needs to be some adjustments there of either time or nozzle or whatever it may be. You may have a leaky valve, the valve that controls that zone. It can leak just like anything else. And then you have a big flooding area around the valve box, or wherever the manifold is, where all the valves are. Everybody's different in their yards, so you have to look around. But that's something you do need to know where all those pieces are. Here's the valve box. You should normally see they have, sometimes we'll have big valve boxes like this with a big green lid. Sometimes they have the smaller round valve boxes. So need to locate that. If you have 6 zones or 8 zones, you need to know where all those valve boxes are. Sometimes the bigger ones have 1 or 2 or 3 valves in them. The little ones usually only have 1 valve in them. But may need to dig it up, may need to take some of the sod off, whatever it may be, so that they're easy to check and easy to maintain. High pressure, that's what we talked about earlier. If it's too high a pressure, it's just misting. That's about a 30% effectiveness, which means about 50% of that water that's going way up here, as high as tall or taller than you are, none of that ever reaches back to the ground because it just evaporates and gets blown away. So if we've got that much pressure, we need to look at doing something. Generally, that's going to be an irrigation professional to come out. Maybe they need to put a pressure reducer in that, or do some other kinds of adjustments to get that pressure off. You may even need to change to different types of nozzles instead of, this is the old style nozzle, and go to some of the newer style nozzles that we'll talk about in a minute. There's another that's just missed. Runoff, we don't need to water the concrete. It's always tough when you put irrigation system right on the edge of curbs because you want it to get this way, but you don't want it to run off. When it's right on the edge, it's hard to make sure that you don't have some of it. So a lot of it can just be adjustments, changing out the nozzle, reducing a little, using that screw on the top to reduce the pressure coming out. All of that again, but you're only going to see that usually at 4 o'clock in the morning. So you're going to have to periodically run it during the day so you can see it. Here it can be a road hazard here, it's making it wet. So if it's cold or icy or whatever, and you got that much water you're putting out on the street, number one, it's a huge waste. But number two, it's just a poorly designed system. So it needs to be adjusted. Maybe again, changing heads out, and maybe changing nozzles out, maybe restricting the flow using the screw on the top. There's lots of different opportunities to change that. A leaky cap, here, that screws back down on there. But after a while, sometimes some things get up in there. Sometimes the weather just cracks, a little tiny crack, or it doesn't seal as well, or you didn't get it tightened good. So if it's leaking there, then that means there's not as much pressure going up here. So you may need to physically tighten it up a little bit. You may need to take it apart to clean it. Maybe have to change the whole head out. Maybe just change the insides out in the cap and leave the body there. It all depends on each individual head. Poor design and poor maintenance. As you can see, we're getting plenty of water here, all the green areas, but not in these areas. So that's the huge, not a red flag, I guess a brown flag, showing you there's some irrigation issues there. And again, you simply go out during the day to run it zone by zone, look to see why this is not getting enough water. It could be heavily compacted and the water is just running off. It could be a bad design. It may just the system hadn't been maintained. Maybe things are not popping up. It's hard to say until you physically run it. But again, that can be done by the individual, or maybe in this case, that large of a system may need to have a professional come out and do it. But we all seen this, you drive down the street and you see these fences where they have these half moon looking things, and that's where the water is hitting the fence. We don't need to water that fence. I mean, yes, we need water all the way up here to get all the grass, but we don't need that much going that high on, sorry about that, and that high on the fence. So that's simply a head adjustment or a nozzle adjustment. Again, that can be done easily by you, the homeowner, or have somebody come out and do it if they're coming out to fix some other things. Here's the nozzle adjustment I was talking about. There's an adjustment screw here in the top, a very small one, so you need a very small flathead screwdriver. You adjust the spray distance and the radius of the throw. So clockwise, if you turn it clockwise, lengthens the throw. If you turn it counterclockwise, that shortens the throw. And it shortens the throw by restricting a little bit of the volume of water coming out of that nozzle. So it's a simple, easy thing to do. And you may need to do it periodically during the year. You may need to do it because of grass or plants growing or whatever it may be. Here's some other things you can change out your nozzles yourself. And you may have an 8-foot radius, you have a 10-foot radius, you have a 12-foot radius, you have a 15-foot radius. And here is, it simply means it's an F is full, so it comes out all the way around. Or you may be a half nozzle that the spray only comes out half of it, so it only fans out that way. Or you have a quarter only going out that way, or you have a third only going out this way. So it's all going to depend on, if you have curves, or if you have plant material, or if you're on a curb, or whatever you have. You may have to put in a different thing here. They also have, most of them have a adjustable nozzle that it can adjust all the way from full all the way out to a quarter. with the same nozzle just by adjusting the top. So depends on what you want to do. Again, here is that little filter in there that gets stopped up. It doesn't take very much small sand particulates and things over a year's time to fill that up, which reduces the amount of water coming out of your nozzle. But again, that can be done, and these can be bought at an irrigation supply, can be bought at a box store or nursery, wherever you happen to shop. Some of the new things that are coming out, which I think are very nice, is these new stream rotors. So instead of coming out and atomizing and having all this mist, you just simply change the nozzle, same head, same body, same everything there. You just simply unscrew the nozzle and put a new nozzle on. So the water comes out in streams like this. Some of them are just a steady, again, can be half or 3/4, and some of them actually will stream out and rotate. It depends on the nozzle. But you can increase your efficiency by a minimum of 33% just simply by changing out this nozzle for that nozzle. You spend more time going to the store to buy them than you do changing them out. You simply go out and pick that nozzle up, put a pair of vice grips or something to hold them up, unscrew it, take the filter out, clean it, or put a new filter in, take this nozzle, screw it right back on top, pull the vice grips out, and you're done. That's how simple it is. Some of the new things that they're using, you see now, are irrigation, drip irrigation. We've had drip irrigation for a long time in the beds, but now we have it for the turf. You can put it in if you're putting in a new yard before you put the turf down, or you can go in and put it in afterwards. Instead of the big trenchers that dig these huge wide holes, now they have drip irrigation trenchers here that dig a very narrow hole here in a trench that's only like 2 or 3 inches wide. And so that just the drip irrigation fits down in there, and then you just rake it back over easily to fill in the holes. Most of the time, you're going to go 5 to 6 inches in the ground, and that's simply to encourage the root system to penetrate farther down into the ground to get the water for you. Works great. It's much, much more efficient than using above ground irrigation. And in some of our states, Arizona, New Mexico, some of those areas there, you no longer are allowed to put water up in the air. If you have drip irrigation for your sod or irrigation for your sod, it has to be below ground drip irrigation. So it's coming. There's a small trencher you can see. That's how wide that trench is right there. So it's easy, it makes it real fine, and it's easy to put it in, and then it's just easy to rake it right back in. Some people, think about it, like to have drip, but they don't want to convert their yard over or don't want to spend the money. Maybe you have a patio that has a whole bunch of hanging baskets, or maybe you have a whole bunch of pots on the patio. You want to just run a simple irrigation system to get them for you while you're on your 2-week vacation. So it's easy. You can buy all of these pieces, again, at a box store or irrigation supply or wherever. You got your regular hose bib or faucet coming out of the wall. You put a backflow preventer on there. It just simply screws on, and that keeps any water from here going back into your system. Then you have a splitter so that you can still use this for a hose or whatever, but you can use it for your irrigation. Then you come here with a filter. It's just a simple filter. Again, they just screw on there, so it's really easy to do. Nothing, no plumbing issues. You unscrew that filter periodically and clean it out and put it back in. It's just a bigger version of what's underneath the head. You can get a timer. It can be mechanical, it can be electric, it can be photocell, whatever you want, however much you want to spend, so that you can turn your drip on and be able to walk away and know it'll go off. Then you have a pressure regulator because we need to reduce the pressure for drip down to about 20 psi instead of the 40 to 60 to 80 psi that you have in a normal home. And then you have your tubing adapter or your garden hose or wherever it's going. And so it's easy to do. You can buy all those parts retail at a box store, garden store, or whatever for 40 or 50 bucks. And in 15 minutes, put all of it together. And then you've got a drip irrigation system that you can put up for a week, 2 weeks, a day, or for the whole season. And when you're done with it, you simply unscrew it, roll it all up, put it away until you need it the next time. Here's attach it, doing the same thing, but splitting it out and doing 2 different drip systems coming out. And so that's easy to do. Or you have 3 or however many that you need. Again, something easy for you as a homeowner to do to adapt to a specific need without having to go in and convert an irrigation system into a drip, which is easy to do, but it's a little more complex, or whatever you need. Here's some do-it-yourself tools and materials. You know, people say, I don't have a lot of tools. You need a pipe cutter, a few of the pieces that put it together, and that's it. You know, $20 or $30 worth of tools, and you're ready to do it and ready to go. Put your own drip irrigation system in. Even newer technology is the smart controllers, which have evapotranspiration ET controllers, which are controlled by weather stations. They're controlled via the internet and whatever it may be, so that it'll turn it off and on depending on how the individual weather is and how much soil moisture you have. It's wonderful. It's a smart controller. They even have soil monitors like this that go down into the soil that monitor how deep your water is going into your soil. It's probably something you're going to want to have a professional put in, but it's not anything a homeowner couldn't do if they're handy. Here's this pressure regulated sprinkler heads that we talked about that will adjust the amount of pressure coming in and out just simply by using the adjustment here. And here's the inline pressure regulators that can be put in to reduce it down to 40 psi or 20 psi or 30 psi or whatever it may be. Adjusting your rotor heads. If you have rotors instead of pop-ups, you should have a key. If you've lost the key or didn't have it, you can buy it at an irrigation supply. You turn it clockwise to deflect the stream, or counterclockwise to increase it. Be sure to leave the set screw in at least an 1/8 of an inch so that it'll hold that nozzle in. That's where your water is coming out of. You can simply change the nozzles out easily. If the nozzle's not there, it's not held in, or it's messed up, you can change it out and it'll give you different patterns and different PSI and how much gallons per minute there is. One of the important things about some of the newer controllers is set for cycle and soak. Using areas with clay soil or slopes, you determine how long to run each zone using catch cans that we talked about earlier. You may have 2 or 3 short cycles instead of 1 long cycle. So if you find out that your water in a particular zone is getting run off in 5 minutes, but you need to run it for 15 minutes, you can cycle and soak. Set it to run for 5 minutes. It'll run all of the zones. It'll then come back on for another 5 minutes and run all the zones. And then it'll come back on again and run all the zones again for 5 minutes. Still, they're running the same 15 minutes, but you're not having runoff out into the street or wherever it may be. So it's a great way, and most all of the new ones have it. Some of the older controllers don't, but they usually have program A and B, so you can do it the same way with that. Code enforcement, the different cities and different things there. Here's a basic number for Fort Worth. All the irrigation is controlled by TCEQ, which is the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, for your licensing. And then the TCEQ irrigation staff can be reached if you have any particular questions as well. There are lots of resources out there. Your individual water utility, whether it be the city of Arlington or be the Fort Worth or wherever it might be living. SaveTarrantWater.com, WaterIsAwesome.com, TexasSmartscape.com. My favorite is Aggie Horticulture, since I worked for Texas A&M for so many years. Watch some wonderful things there. All kinds of wonderful things out there that you can find. And last but not least, the Tarrant County Master Gardener Help Desk. I had the privilege of working with those individuals for close to 30 years, and they are some fine people. You can call and they can give you information on irrigation, plants, trees, shrubs, whatever you want. Call that number, 884-1945. If you call it, we finally got right as I retired, finally got an answer machine. So if you call on the weekends or not during the 9 to 5, you can leave them a message and they'll get back to you. So great people to help you. Hope it helped answer a few of the questions that you might have had. Let Heather know if you'd be interested in more sessions like this to answer, question and answer, or something on more in depth on a particular heads or whatever it may be. We're always glad to help in any way we can. So with that, Heather, I'm going to turn it back over to you for questions, or if anybody had any. Otherwise, that's all I have for today.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Steve. That's very informative. It looks like we do have a few questions. So everyone, if you have any questions for Steve right now, go ahead and type them in the question and answer box, and then I'll ask Steve. I also want to let everyone know I've posted a handout in there. So you should have a section on your little control panel that says handouts, and you can download that handout there. And that's just your sprinkler controller basics. So that's just some basic information about how you can program your sprinkler controller. All right, Steve, let's see. What is our first question? Okay, someone is asking about like irrigating your foundation. So do you have any
Okay.
recommendations for that?
Foundations is important because, with our clay soil, it shrinks and swells quite often,
Yeah.
because we either have too much water or we don't have any and we have a drought. So yes, if we're not getting a regular rainfall, it's wise to irrigate around your foundation. Usually, if just a simple drip hose will work. You want to try to put it out 12 to 14 inches away from your foundation wall, though. If you get it up too close and get too wet, it can cause issue with your brick and mortar. So we say 12 to 14 inches away. If you don't have any moisture, run it maybe once a month if you're not having any rain or if you're in the middle of a drought. It'll greatly help control shrink and swell and then the foundation issues.
Okay. And you recommend drip for that?
I feel like that's the best because you can control it. You don't have it going up against the walls. You don't have it hitting the windows. And it's much more efficient. Just remember, when you run drip, it's gallons per hour instead of gallons per minute. So you're going to have to run a drip system like that, maybe a couple hours.
Mm-hmm.
But you're putting out very little water, but it's penetrating deeper into the soil, so it's doing a better job.
Okay. And so if it's the middle of the summer and we haven't gotten, any rain or whatever, how many inches per month do you think you would put down on your foundation or around it a bit?
I tell people the same thing as we do in the yard. If we can get an inch of water a week into the soil during the hot growing season, that's a wonderful way. So it's kind of the same thing. If we can, we have a drought and we're trying to keep the foundation, an inch a week is a good manageable number.
Okay. An inch a week is good. Okay. We'll move on to the next question then. That was great. There's always someone who asks about foundation, and it's so true that, I mean, especially here in our region, right? A lot of people have the concrete foundations, and then we've got clay soil. So it's just so important to uh, keep paying attention to that, I guess. Um, okay, someone says, you said that some of the new technology can be 33% more efficient. So can you just kind of explain a little bit what that means? Is that 33% less water to irrigate the same area, or that would be like 33% is not lost, that was lost to the previous old technology, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to, when they say that it's more efficient in getting the water out to the plants and being able to be used. Part of it is the fact that it doesn't evaporate as much. Part of it is the fact that it soaks farther into the ground.
Hmm.
Part of it is the fact that it doesn't run off as much. So it's a lot of different factors all figuring into that 33%. But those are the three main things. It doesn't run off, it doesn't evaporate, and it gets down to where the plants can actually take it up.
Okay. Yeah, and I think, like with a regular spray system, right, they say that it's only about 70 or so percent of the water, right, that you're putting out is actually getting to the soil, getting it down in there, and the rest of it is lost due to, like you said, evaporation, overspray,
Actually, it's
things like that.
in the, when those, like I was telling you on the earlier with those mist, when they're misting up in the air, those are
Hmm.
about 40 to 45% effective.
So pretty bad. You're
Yeah,
losing
yeah. So
50%
that's where
of
going to
your,
that stream rotors or
yeah.
changing nozzle out, that can increase, 30 to 40% right there.
Okay. All right, we've got somebody else that's asking about those adjustable nozzles where you were talking about. So there are some that can be adjusted from like a half a pie to a quarter pie, and like you
Uh-huh.
can adjust them out,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah. They're simply, again, they just unscrew and screw right back on the top. And then they have an adjustment on the top of the nozzle itself that you can manually adjust out, from 0 to 360 degrees.
Okay. Yeah, those are great. Those are really good for people that need to kind of do different things, right?
Sure, yeah, that for the curbs and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of our beds are becoming more circular
Mm-hmm.
instead of straight lines. So it helps it to adjust to what you need.
All right. So someone is asking about, like, is there a way to, if you have an existing in-ground sprinkler system, is there a way to convert a portion of that to drip? Or would you have to like convert your whole system if you wanted to do that?
That's a great question, and yes, it is possible. The thing that you have to do is if you decide to convert over, you have to convert an entire zone.
Hmm.
So if you have 6 zones, 3 in the front and 3 in the back, for instance, you have to convert an entire, one of the zones. You can't just convert a part of it. And it's fairly easy to do. It can be done by the homeowner, uh, or you can have somebody come out and do it. It's simply you take it all of the, flag all of that zone, find a 1 or 2 heads that are conveniently set up for your beds or whatever you're doing. You cap all the rest of them off, and then you put adapter heads on top of where the nozzle was,
Hmm.
and you connect your drip hoses right there. And then the biggest difference is, again, those now are putting out measured in gallons per hour instead of gallons per minute. So a normal drip line will put out, depending on the drip line, anywhere from a half to 2 gallons in an hour, as opposed to a pop-up that's putting out 2 gallons per minute.
Hmm.
So as you can see, if you want X amount of gallons out, it only takes 5 or 10 minutes to put it out of a pop-up. But if it's 2 gallons per hour and you need 10 gallons, you may have to run that drip line for 5 hours, for instance.
Right. Yeah. So it's
You're
just the
it's still
time's not
much
compatible.
more efficient, and you're still using a lot less water than you would in a pop-up. You're just having to run it longer.
Hmm. Right. Yeah. So the system can be easily switched over. We just got to make sure that it's the correct timing on each zone,
Right.
right?
But
Yeah.
it has to have the whole entire zone, because you can't have something coming up that's spraying spray heads,
Hmm.
because in some that's a drip, because you got to adjust the time different.
Right. Yeah. It would be so different. Okay, perfect. And also, I just want to let everyone know that in, I believe, a month or so, we're also going to be doing a DIY drip irrigation class, like all about drip irrigation. So if you're interested in that, definitely keep an eye on our events calendar on savetarrantwater.com, and you can attend our class. Like I said, I think it's at the end of August or so. That is going to be just about drip irrigation if you're interested about converting drip. Another little drip question. So if you're putting your drip irrigation out in the lawn, like how close together do you do the trenches?
Uh, that depends on your drip irrigation hose.
Okay.
Your hose, most of the time, you were showing earlier. Let's see if we can go back to. Um, uh, Here you can see they have emitters that are in the hose itself. And so they are, depending on the ones you buy, they're either 6 inches apart, or they're 12 inches apart, or they're 18 inches apart.
Okay.
So that shows you how much you have to trench to put them apart. If they're a 6 inch distance between the nozzles, then you're going to trench every 6 inches. If it's a 12 inch, you're going to run it, trench a little wider. So it's all depending on what kind of hose that you buy to vary and how far apart the nozzles are.
Okay. All right. So that's going to be, yeah, vary by the type of pipe you buy.
Right.
Okay. Let's see. What is your recommendation for dealing with the effect of wind on sprinklers? Do you just recommend to just not water when the winds are high, or?
Well, that's one of the reasons that we most of the time we recommend watering, with the in-ground system, we recommend watering at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning,
Mhm.
because that's the least amount of wind on a typical day. Um, Most of the cities have gone to where you can't water from 10 to 6 or 11 to 6 or whatever
Yep.
during the day, because that's the windiest time of the day.
Yep. Windy and hot.
If you're watering, with a system that's not in ground, then you want to get the most efficient type of uh, sprinklers that you can, that puts it low to the ground, as opposed to those, the big kind we used to put down for the kids that had a big fan way up in the air.
Hmm. Yeah.
Then those are the least efficient, but they're
Right.
great for kids.
Yeah, those are the fun ones.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. If so, this person says that they had their sprinkler system just stop working suddenly after a pipe repair. What would you think might be the problem with that?
Could have got something in that blocked a valve. If the entire system quit working, the first place would be to go back and check the controller to make sure that it's still got power to it and everything is working there. Then you just have to work your way out,
Hmm.
um, to go to that master valve to see if you have water coming out of it, and then go out to each individual valve to see if you have water coming out of that. Uh, you know, it's hard to say, who fixed the plumbing issue. Maybe they didn't realize you had an irrigation system and rerouted it and accidentally cut your backflow preventer out. So, but
Okay.
the easiest thing is just to turn it up manually, turn the zone on, and go check that valve to see if there's any water coming out of it.
Okay. Yeah, and like maybe if you have water coming out of some of your heads but not others, like you said, there might just be a
Yeah,
clog in there
yeah,
somewhere, right? Like a piece
or,
of dirt or.
yeah. Or it could be that, as we showed that part of it on the valve. You have that solenoid. Solenoid could have gone bad. It's not turning the valve on and off. It's really hard to say, but just
Hmm.
start at the beginning and work your way out.
Yep. Okay. Okay, so we've got a few questions about like that, what you were talking about the throw being adjusted by that screw on the top. So if I have, let's say, an area that I'm irrigating and it seems like my sprinkler is spraying past my bed, is it better for me to like buy a new like, nozzle to go on top that is shorter, or should I use that screw on top to just adjust it down?
If the top adjusts the amount of pressure coming out, which then will reduce it a little bit. If it's a major change, then you probably want to change the nozzle out. If
Okay.
I just need to, if I find out it's going along the edge of the curb and I'm getting just a tiniest bit of water out on the curb, then I can go in and cut the nozzle down a little bit and adjust it with a screw. If it's I need to adjust it in several feet, then I probably need to go to a different nozzle. Again, nozzles are inexpensive. Depending on which one you get, they're anywhere from 99 cents to $2 or $3. So
Okay.
easy to do, and once you switch one out, then you just put it back in your toolbox, and because you may need it on another head somewhere else.
Yep. Okay, and does that work for spray nozzles and for rotors, or is it just one or the other?
Yes. Uh-huh. As we talked about, this is for the simple ones, and then what's that?
Yeah, I remember you did say something about,
Here
yeah,
you're adjusting it here with a bigger key
with the key.
to
Okay.
adjust the top coming down.
Okay. So you just need a key for the rotors. It's a little bit
Yes.
different,
Uh-huh.
but similar.
And then again, easy to change out that nozzle in there too if you need to go to a different length or a different throw.
Okay. All right, we've got one more question left, and it's an easy one. So, do you just use like a regular sharpshooter shovel or whatever to dig out around the head, like if you're gonna, take the head out and replace it or anything?
Yeah, depending on what you are, some people just use a small hand trowel. Some people use a sharpshooter, because you want to get in and dig out around it, without disturbing your turf too much.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're careful and work it out, you can pull it out in piece, cone looking piece, and then you can stick that cone right back in when you're done.
Okay, yeah. So if you got sawed around it, kind of try to like cut a donut kind of in the
Yeah,
saw
yeah,
so
uh-huh,
that you can put it back on top, right?
yeah. And then getting time, you press it back down real good and kind of step on it a little bit, and in a week or two, you never know that you dug it up.
Yep. Okay, well, it looks like that's all the questions. So thank you so much, Steve, for sharing all of your wisdom with us. And thank you, everyone, for being here. If you have any more questions, you can always email us at conservation@trwd.com. Or like Steve said, you can also always call the Master Gardener number as well. And they have tons of information, not just about gardening, but also about like irrigation and all those types of things as well. And again, if you live in the city of Arlington, make sure to come by and get your free sprinkler test kit from the library. And I'll be sending out an email probably tomorrow with all that information as well if you missed it. Also, if you missed a portion of the presentation, I'll be sending out a recording of the presentation as well. So you can watch it over again, get more information. And if you missed a little bit, you can see that. All right. Thank you so much, Steve, and have a good evening, everyone.
You're welcome. Have a good evening.
All right. Bye.
Bye.